Okay, everyone,
Please roll.
this is the meeting of the Shellfish Advisory Panel. You're hearing the Providence River Shellfish Management Area harvest schedule proposals. But before we get going, Eric, do you want to speak to the Zoom?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Schneider. So this meeting is also being broadcasted in Zoom. So all the folks on Zoom, we will give you an opportunity to make a comment. We ask that you raise your hand, we'll put you in the queue. And after we go through all the questions in the room, we'll give you a chance to make your comment. And Katie's going to explain the overall process in terms of speaking and questions. So just be patient with us on Zoom, but we will get to you. And if you can't find the raise your hand, we get through all the proposals, we will just open it up for folks to unmute. Thanks.
Okay, we have 6 proposals. For each proposal, we will ask the person who proposed it, if they're here, if they want to speak to it, and we'll give them about like 2 or 3 minutes just to kind of clarify, or if they just want to elaborate on the proposal. And then after that, those couple of minutes, we will open it up to any clarifying questions only. Not discussion, just, discussion of social limits or what they mean by different parts of the proposal. After we go through all 6 proposals, we will open it up for discussion. So yeah, see how that goes. And hopefully someone can make a motion, and then we'll have a proposal to recommend. Great. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. So proposal 1 is it was proposed by Michael Monteforti. Mike, you're here. Would you like to speak to it or explain? Kind of.
Sure. The reason why I chose the wording in my proposal is I would like to see a more conservative approach to the harvest of the shellfish in the Providence River. And I would like to also see the as opposed to just limiting the harvest time during the summer. I'd like to see it open all year, and with Monday through Friday, depending on the rain and so on and so forth. It's kind of just the same approach as we do in Greenwich. The reason why I know the 3 bushel limit is not, it doesn't jive with everybody, but to me, I'm afraid. I don't want to see happen to the Providence River happen like it's happened to the Lower Bay. It's very hard to make a living now for me. I realize I'm limited, so it's very hard for me to make a living, and with expenses and everything else, and my dock fee, and so it's I just thought this would be a way to judge just how management is doing and not overburden the resource. You got to kind of keep it balanced and moving along, and then next year if we find that it seems to be working and there doesn't seem to be a drastic decline in the clams, well then we could change change the limit, and that is open for discussion in the future. But at least it gives us some an idea of how this 52-day-a-week schedule would work if you approve it, or it doesn't work, and kind of take it gently or in a more conservative manner and go like that. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have any questions, clarifying questions about this proposal? Go ahead, Brennan.
If the 52 potential days, so like in the middle of like the winter, is Greenwich open as well? So our dealers dealing with 3 potential Greenwich days and a Providence River Day in the middle of it.
I would assume if it's open and Greenwich is open as well, then yes. Anybody else, any questions? Eric, are there any hands raised on the Zoom?
No.
I do have a question, by one weekday each week, on the first day of the week, not opposed to rainfall closure. I guess my question would be, so it would open the Monday, so Monday would be, the default start day, and then assuming there's no rain of following Monday, so Monday would be the day, and then it could open on a Friday.
Yeah, right, exactly, just like Greenwich, except for instead of being Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it would be the same kind of rotation. I guess it's called, a rolling schedule. I know enforcement doesn't like a rolling schedule, but it would be a rolling schedule, and they would determine the rainfall and whether it's open, and like we all do, we call to the enforcement, and they tell us, yes, it's going to open, or it's going to close, and just proceed in that fashion.
Thank you.
On the calendar, Sunday's the first day.
Right, so I think because it's weekdays, he's proposing weekdays, so I think Monday is the first day. Okay, no more questions, we'll move on to the next proposal.
Let's refresh it.
You guys are working.
Okay. All right, everyone, we're back and running. Our second proposal is by Kyle Terra. Kyle, are you here to speak to this? You know if he's on the Zoom?
I do not see.
Okay. So I will, I guess, read it. So commercial harvest opens June 1 through October 28th. 8 to 9 a.m. Monday and Wednesday. Possession limit 6 bushels per person per day. Closed when MSY is met. So it looks like it's 1 hour per day, Monday and Wednesday. He's not here, so we can't ask. To elaborate on this, but I guess if anyone has any questions, we can ask Department of Fisheries and Fisheries if they have any. No, go ahead, Dave.
That's not a typo, right? It's 1 hour?
Correct.
Yes,
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
okay.
I get that 6 bushels in a month.
Are there any questions on the Zoom? No, okay. If no more questions, we'll move on to report.
Okay,
Oh, sorry. Okay.
on these proposals,
Yeah,
the language that he uses, I don't believe it's fixed. He says 1 hour, and the group supports that, except the 1 hour, they want 2 hours or whatever. In other words, proposals that are put in never submitted. And the support from the men can determine whether they want to alter that so that they get a general approval. So it's not fixed at 1 hour. That's his specific proposal.
this, yeah, so this is his
You know.
proposal.
But each one of the proposals has high points. And you may want to combine the high points to make a single proposal that everybody finds acceptable.
I was just wondering if it was a typo, that's all.
Right, you know, right. Some guys think they can do that in an hour, like Rick Gus.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, and we might have a typo or at some point, not captured the proposal correctly. So if that is the case, just let us know. But that case, that is the language.
And that's really the reason why I would like, if the person is here who made any of the proposals, they can kind of elaborate and clarify. So, okay, moving on to proposal 3. So, John, would you like to speak to this proposal?
Oh, yeah. 8 AM to 11, basically the same as last year. Just open 2 days before the Memorial weekend. And then after that, 2 days a week, there's available 9 consecutive days. Close Memorial Day over to July. And then I wanted to see it open, throughout the winter, 1 day a week. I picked Wednesday, just, I think it's, better for the dealers to have it for the weekend and stuff, but, it gives a better opportunity, but, the business as a whole to, actually use our own plans to market as opposed to some of the stuff that's coming from out of state because of local participation. So, and according to, the range was, came out for like 28 potential days. He is, for the quality of whatever, came up with that number for me. So it's similar to some, what we had last year, just more days, days in the winter as opposed to in the fall.
Does anyone have any, Brad, do you have any questions?
I'm just curious. What in the winter, the slowest time of the year?
We'll save that for the discussion.
Okay.
Anyone else have any more clarifying questions? Anyone on the Zoom? Thank you, John. On to proposal 4. Lander, Mr. Lander, are you in the audience?
Yep.
Okay. We're offering everyone 2 to 3 minutes to speak to their proposal.
I'm gonna read it.
Okay.
And that was a major thing that we didn't use that much.
Let's try to stick to what your proposal is on the
That's
screen. Okay,
That's what I read. It's based on the fact that this company broke down to a very static approach to this, where we just need to think that we cannot go the far. I think it's completely fine. So first off, the drug survey needs to be combined or replaced with other methods of following. Industry landing, full rating, and quadrant studies performed on diet. This needs to be done immediately, aggressively, and frequently to instill reliability and confidence in stuff. Industry landings alone is how we work risks with improved and reliable data population densities, assuming the densities are being far greater in current estimates as opposed to following. Immediately open all areas on all calendar days that were following committees, including Providence River area and areas currently closed northward of area to Saving Point and beyond for the following committee. This would allow much needed thinning of these closed areas. Optimal reproductive population density is stated by Mark Gibson, where across 5 cohorts were needed. The density taking cohort. Also allowing thinning down of overly dense unfished areas will result in maximum spat reduction which strips of the water and all thinning downstream and the basin areas as well. Restrictions would only be considered when average population density is about 5 cohort. And it's also technical language and the greater the minimum size. And what's normal full unrestricted openings also simplify management as well. These conditions are met. The increased supply of top quality plants and Narragansett Bay will enter the market. The increase in supply with flood required increasing demand and growing market share. Narragansett Bay now provides less than 10% of the market, which historically was over 90%. Obvious room for major growth. Existing wholesalers to expand and new wholesalers to enter. Increase in demand prices necessarily rise, even if the mutual prices drop temporarily, while wholesalers and buyers adjust with can be rise.
thank you.
I got one more.
10 seconds.
Also, commercial license holders should be able to sell their clams at retail to restaurants, farmers markets, neighbors.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that.
You know, hey,
That's not in our purview. I'm so sorry. But we're sticking to for opening and closing only. And
Just
you're,
because you're
I
at
think
the
you,
table doesn't mean.
I'm not.
Making a suggestion.
I get it, but that's,
You've never let me finish. I've got one paragraph.
you,
I would
the
feel
rules
at least-
is the rules for a reason, sir. Everyone else is given the same
Not
amount
more
of
than
time.
5 minutes. If you stop.
So the other person budget after we move through, for everybody else, people,
Why?
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Does anybody, any questions for Mr. Lander? Clarifying questions?
obviously. No room for open minds here. This guy already listened to the radio. Let's.
Okay, thank you.
I know this is like. Newspaper, but I'm at least trying to push the area with this.
Okay, moving on to proposal 5.
Hey, Jack. Jack. I guess that's me.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Things we can't control. How much it rains. They've been keeping records since 1904. First year we opened 2 years ago. It was the 3rd wettest ever. 120 something years. Second year we opened, it was the driest, very driest. Both years we asked for the same amount of days, pretty much. But the first year, because of the rain and craziness, it was only open 14 times. Last year, because of the drought, it was open 28 times.
So what we're trying to do is be consistent with what we're asking for, and hopefully the mean will finally come to the middle. We basically put the same schedule as we did last year forward. But in a nod to the enforcement and the concerns they raised, we added days to not having the 2 non-consecutive openings or the first available. At first, we were talking Tuesday and Thursday, but at the membership meeting, that was well attended. Several dealers thought Monday and Wednesday was better for them. So we basically went for a Monday and Wednesday schedule. When we get into September, where we're still looking to do 1 day a week, we did go with the 1 designated day. Now, as I guess Dave Borkman last meeting, and we kind of knew, when you go for the first available day, it really opens your odds to getting something in that week. So picking Tuesday, as much as we're doing it for enforcement concerns, is not ideal because it could rain on Tuesday night, Wednesday, and you miss it the next week. But we understand that in the summer and early fall, enforcement is helpful to them to have a scheduled day. We did put Tuesday in for the December openings, but I would ask enforcement, I think your guys aren't nearly as busy that time of year, that we could do the first available for the 3 December openings that we're asking for. That would pretty much help in getting at least one of the days in. December is notoriously wet. The first year that we had the rain, we actually had a dry December 2 years ago. We got all 3 days in. And amazingly, we got all of Greenwich in that month, which never happens. I can't ever remember having all of. But of course, we have the drought and it rains in December this last year. We only got 1 day in. So basically, this is the same schedule as last year. We are being consistent with what we've been asking for. We cannot control the rain. Maybe one of these years, like this coming year, we'll have a nice one right in the middle, you know, and it will work out where there's 20, 22 openings like it should be. But we can only control what we ask for and not what the weather gives us. And I, once again, will ask enforcement if they would be comfortable for the December openings to go to the first available day. And we would modify our proposal if they have no problems with it or they would support that. So I'll stop.
Does anyone have any questions for Mike?
Monday, Wednesday fixed for the 3 hours. There's open 2 days a week. Or that's Monday, Wednesday fixed. Yeah. Okay, thank you. We originally put Tuesday, I guess the straw man that the enforcement or Fish and Wildlife put was a Tuesday, Thursday. And originally that's what we thought, oh, that sounds good, but in talking to Brandon and my brother, you know, basically Monday, Wednesday was better. And I'm not crazy about doing Tuesdays after September, but we felt that it wasn't as critical that period of time. And enforcement still probably had obligations because of the weather. But as I mentioned, if they could consider doing December as the first available day, that would be very helpful for the fishery.
Any more questions?
Mike, what do you, for December, how do you want it to go? It would be like the last 2 Decembers, it would be the first available day during that stretch. So the stretch starts on the December the 11th. Plus 2 Tuesdays? No, it would be simply, the Tuesdays would only be for September and October. And December. Well, and December would be, that's what we put up there in deference to you guys. Because we heard that there was a real problem. Yeah, with the rolling out, with the rolling date, did have a problem. We supported that, tried to work with that, but it was taken. I think Jeff told me that was taken advantage of. That's why we don't support the rolling dates. I'm still trying. You want the first. If the designated days, the only time it would be the 3 weeks in December. Would that be the first available? And that was to try to clean, because that's so important for the fishermen. Now that our licenses are going up 100% and Christmas and all that other stuff, it'd be really easy to lose a day if you just had a designated day. You know, one day it could have been open, but it rained, and then you missed the whole week. So we want to open Tuesday, or if not, next week. Well, not to be over confusing, if you guys don't have a problem with the rolling days for the 3 weeks in December, we'd like. Anything. Right, is that any day for the week? Yes, like any first, yeah, it's bad. Right, I just need that's fine. It doesn't, he said, if you agree, he would change that. Yeah, we basically put a schedule together, that we heard, the enforcement concerns. And we're trying to, work with you guys to see, but it would be really helpful for us to have December as a rolling day. But it's not, this is your option. Yes.
So you were saying Tuesdays are fixed, the rest of the schedule is. So after September.
Everything is fixed. We're asking that the 3 weeks in December become rolling.
Okay.
You want me to change that, Mike? I can-
Well, if enforcement can make a decision on the moment, I would say yes, but that's,
How about
I think between now and the.
Into discussion for that, because I think that would be a good, something we can kind of work with, okay. Okay. And then any questions on Zoom? Moving on to proposal 6. This was a last minute proposal that was not in your e-packet, so. It looks like it is from Rhode Island Seafood Company, which is also known as the Seafood. So they are proposing first available one day per week, first available Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Starting May 22nd. 24 days total, same time, 8 to 11, 6 bushels. Person to listen for vote. So basically, it looks like a rolling schedule, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, 1 day per week. So it looks like a 1 day a week schedule, potentially year round, or until 24 days have been fished. Does anyone have any questions?
I do, Katie, but I'll wait until SAP members weigh in.
Okay, thank you. Any staff members have any? Go ahead.
Was there any, with this proposal, was there any preferential treatment for days in December? Because if we have a dry, if we begin in May 22nd and we have a dry year, we could potentially use up 24 days before we even get to December. Therefore, we'd have no openings during the holidays, and the dealers really need stuff.
Yeah. I guess that could be, I assume that would be something to consider. If this proposal is something that people are interested in, you could probably work with that and maybe set it so it's reserved for it, but good question. Go ahead, John.
I was just gonna say, if you can reserve a lot, like 3 days with the number of that, if not, you should really know later in the year.
Yeah. Okay, does anyone have any, are there any questions on the Zoom? No? Okay, so that wraps up all of our. I think now we can all start with the discussion and, yeah, let's maybe start with discuss for a little bit. Maybe work amongst yourself and then if maybe a motion seems to come up. How do you think about that? Well, okay, so we'll discuss for a little while, and then if anyone has a motion or if it seems to go over before the motion. Does anyone have anything? Go ahead, Brady. That's right, start.
I'm on a couple, well, at least one, and maybe it's implied on some of these, is that bumping up against NXY is kind of the end of the line, if you will. I would submit that years and years of experience in fishery science has warned against that strategy. To basically leave a safety margin on that, such that, the target should not be MSY, but something like 70% of MSY or something of that sort. So I throw that out as a caveat, in terms of true sustainability.
Thank you. Yes,
I have a question for the DGM. So for the period that the river was open, did typically each individual license land 6 bushels for the entire period?
Do you remember what the PPU was?
I think on average, around maybe 3,000 pieces.
It was 2,000.
Yeah, it was
2,000, 3,000.
Actually, they had a slide, I missed the last meeting, sorry, but they had a slide that showed that the CPU, the catch forever, or whatever, actually went up the second year. And if I may, since I'm talking, is there like a MSY number that Fish and Wildlife came up with? We've used that term a couple of times. And talking to different people that went to the meeting, they were confused whether, was there gonna be no counting the days? Was there a certain number of days that they were gonna step in and stop it? Or was there any kind of thought on Fish and Wildlife, what they were going to be doing about that? I pose that as a question.
Sure. So,
They didn't rerun the model and just brought back the same MSY as last time, which is 4.1 million. It was same as last year.
he was actually.
Yeah.
nice job, Ken. That's spot on. So we, it's updating the model that had been used before. So what the projection was 4.1 million pounds, which equated to about, at least based on the projection, I think
That's pounds.
4.1 pieces, sorry, pieces. So that was, I think, through the modeling, that was about 24 days when we got it.
And that was a total, what was the projected number of shellfish that they thought the MSY was working on? 10% of MSY was 10%, was it?
It's like 10 to 12, like 15%. They thought it was 50 million in there.
It didn't take us 24 days.
I had a question.
Pat, I'm sure you have a better idea of this, but what were you saying, what did you say was the estimated cost of 15 million?
Well, that was a different thing than the MSY calculation, wasn't taken into account last year's survey. But that was different. That was just an estimate of what was potentially in the river based off of that. I believe the MSY, and I don't know if Connor's online to speak to it, but it was estimated for the entirety of the river. And then it was scaled back to be proportional to what is actually legal in the conditional area. And so that model was ran last year. It was not updated piece of information. That's why we're using the same number, but the updated simulator is using this past year's harvest information as well.
So if they were talking about having a number of days, was that 1.1 million that they wanted to?
So yes, that is correct. That is the number that is used, and this based off of the added landings and harvest information range, the simulation expanded a little bit. But the median day to reach that number of 4.1 million was 14 days. But it could have been as much as 30, and as low as like 11. So that was the range with the median likelihood of reaching that 4.1 at 14 days. And so that's kind of based off of like where you want to place down this.
Well, that's what we did the first year. We had 14 openings, we did 4.5 million.
Yeah.
So that's like, that's in the world.
Yep. And then again, we talked about doing some calibration studies on the new vessel, and once that happens, we can look back at the estimated, MSY with these a few years of data. That will kind of clarify. hone in on that number.
I'm just quick, not that, I just can't remember. Quickly, what is MSY based on again?
So it's the maximum sustainable yield and take that you can get without, it's a surplus.
Yeah, but what are you basing that for? When
A lot of things go into that, but it's one, the dredging speed, but it's also all the harvest information that we get from the landings. So there's multiple things that go into that.
So you're using the dredge, the count that went from 150.
No, I mean, that last drop this past year was not included in that model.
Because you're
It's
using the
just-
same MSY as before, right?
Yes,
So it's a full stock assessment, so there's a number of different data attributes that can go into it, the dredge. Index is one of them, so is landings, but then it goes through for each year and looks at if there were that, if this many claims were harvested and you have this many claims next year, how many claims must there have been? For each size class, what must the mortality have been? And so it steps through a number of different attributes across time based on the landings. So it's not just the dredge index, so you could do that and just look at the dredge indices. But that wouldn't be an assessment, that would just be an index based way to show that management. So the stock assessment is more robust stuff. But it does include the dredge indices as one of the data feeds that it considers.
It also includes larval supply, so again, some like recruitment or anything.
What was the percentage of clams taken from the MSY last year, 2022 and 2021?
percentage of,
Percentage of the maximum sustainable yield. You said there was 100 million clams in 21, I believe.
that based off the dredge indices. But if you're asking proportion of harvest relative to the MSY, the first year, the harvest was slightly over, it was about like 100% of it, and then if it is 4.1, last year it was over 200%, so it's 10.5 harvest.
But maybe I'm misunderstanding, but you said there was 100 million clams, so if we took 4 million, isn't that close to 4%? I say 50 million.
So,
Well, no, one of them.
so you're asking relative to that estimate of the abundance was in that area, what was the harvest? It was like last year, like 16%, the year before was like. That answers your question.
But the number in the beginning is still an estimated number. The MSY is still an estimated number, correct? Not a hard number.
Yes, and it gets updated as more years of harvest, the more years of the survey. Yeah.
On the number of days, is that determined by 6 bushel? Do you take that the length is 6 bushel landing as the determination for how many days it's going to be open?
That is a factor that we use in the simulator. So we put in the simulator what the MSY is for the area. And then the dredge survey data from the DEM survey. And then we come up with a simulation of different scenarios. So if you want to do 6 bushel with a certain amount of time frame opening, it gives you such amount of days. If you want to do 3 bushels with a certain time period opening, it gives you, more days to work with. So that's why we use the simulator to give you those variations of function. So the 24 days that the division is suggesting is based on 6 bushel. If we're to be brought down to the 3 bushel limit, then that brings up your number of days.
Would it double it?
It would be about double.
So doesn't it make more sense to have the river open more days and just have it equally divided out through the whole year? It seems like perfectly logical, as opposed to limiting all in one particular time of year.
That's certainly an option, you know, it's up to you to make that decision, you know, if that's something that you would like.
Right now, I'd love to have three bushel limit go to every week. And it's just, it's just seemed to be a perfect scenario. And it gives you a better handle on how the resource is doing overall. As opposed to this, having it all limited in a short period of time. Just, I don't know.
I'm having a little trouble here understanding the bushel versus the number of clams. Size range of the harvest clams makes a huge difference in how many you get in a bushel. It also makes a huge difference in the health of the bay, of the clams, or the inventory, whatever you'd like to call it. What is a healthy ratio? What have the harvest been? Or is it all hogs? Is it, because I think it is a mix. And I think that you're going back and forth with 6 bushels. Maybe is there a way you could actually have a number to that? When you say 4.1 million, that doesn't say anything about, that's not a bushel number.
You want to count, so count per bushel?
Well, you're interpreting some of this data with using counts, and then other things we're talking about bushels, and I don't know if
That's the problem.
Apples
We
to oranges.
use enforcement, we use bushels as a measurement on a daily catch, but when it comes to fish and wildlife and the safety system, it's all done on individual counts.
or.
So it's kind of like, so you don't really know what a bushel, how many clams are in a bushel or whatever, but. One time ago, I went there and talked about what was going on in Maryland with the oyster diggers there and how much they were fighting with fish and wildlife, their fish and wildlife. And the biggest problem was having the same, you know, agreeing upon what the data was. And the gentleman said, if you, everybody could agree on the data, like how much is there, then you can fight over how you want to do the regulations. But I think in this case, just when I heard there was kind of conflicting numbers and just seeing the catch there, seeing the CPU, the catch per effort thing going up, I really think they underestimated the amount of clams there by several fold. I know when we evaluated it originally when we did the transplant, we did not see what we saw when it opened up. Various reasons. One was the wind that day and where guys are fishing, but I just think this, you know, I understand you have to have models and do things the way that you've been, you know, trained to do, but I really doubt, you know, or would question the, you know, actual how many clams are there. I think it could be 200 million in that area, just as easy, it could be 50 million.
Any comments, questions on this?
Yeah.
Kyle, actually, Kyle, would you mind speaking to your proposal after you ask a question? In case anyone has any questions, being presented it with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Basically, to make a long story short, I just wanted, whatever I wanted to do was to be done, to try to do something in a way so that the price doesn't go down. My proposal was just my own personal way of trying it. But what I feel like is, if we do the same thing, last year didn't work, the price went down. The price is going down, then what my feeling is, we're doing it wrong. We should try and do something in a way so that it's not gonna go down. And now, whatever we try this year, it ends up being that it goes down and we try something new again next year. But I just feel like that should be taken into account as well.
That's always worked. That's a fishing strategy forever. If the more fish, the less price, always. So as long as I've been fishing. And so to go to his point, the more we harvest, the more intensity the harvest schedule is, it can't change. It's been my whole life has always worked supply and demand. And they know they got us. And you know what else is going on? I mentioned in my proposal. Now we have the Cape has a huge set of plans. And so does Long Island Sound has a huge set of clams. So we're all trying to go to that same market with his thought, supply and demand. And we want, what do? Harvest of more clams for less money. That's exactly, and to the state's point, if we harvest more clams for less money, less taxes we're gonna pay. And so to me, it's to the state's best interest, this is a state resource to make it so that we get the most money for our product, which equates to more taxes.
That's pretty much basically what he just said,
So did you notice that the price went down and you had more days per week? So like 2 days per week, the price put you to the digger went down, right?
Yes.
And that's probably when the price to the dealer is at its peak. Okay, that makes sense.
When Greenwich was open, when Greenwich was in its heyday, you know, we were working on 8-cent clams.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Barrington was the same thing, 8-cent clams, 10-cent clams. And because we had this huge supply and we couldn't stop ourselves. As fishermen, we couldn't stop ourselves from over harvesting. And so the consequence was we worked harder, got less money. Go.
The price is going down, I feel like we're taking it's not needed. That if it was needed, the price would stay the same.
There you go.
Mike, I have a question, actually, earlier, okay, well,
Okay.
sorry, no, Brennan, you can go first.
Okay.
Oh, I heard.
So I just did some quick math out, you know, during the summer, if you guys did the Providence River, you worked 3 hours. I think the CPU was the 2,000 something like that. I did 2,500 as a base, and if you guys got paid 20 cents per piece, you made $500 that day for working 3 hours. If you worked 5 to 7 hours in A or B, and you got 1,000 pieces at 35 cents, you only made $350.
A lot more work, a lot more wage.
So even if the price is at 20 cents, you're digging more pieces, you're making more money. And you're only working 3 hours.
And you've got to make a day's pay every day, not 1 foot a week.
So you're recommending a shorter fishing season,
No, I was just saying that
but
even if
Yes.
they're making less money on the Providence River Day. For
yeah,
those
but
pieces.
but the days, you're still gonna get 24 days, no matter how you split it. You're saying you want them to just work a few weeks?
I think he was just talking about what they.
Yeah, just the price
Right,
wise.
because they're saying 1 day, and you're saying 2 days, so a shorter season, making the same amount of money, just fishing the summer.
Well, I'm just going to their points that they're making.
Oh, no, I'm just trying to clarify, so like, when I bring this to the council, everyone's.
No, I hear you.
Understanding, but.
I'm just saying that, I was just saying to the point where if the price goes down, that they're making less money. But if you're working in the river and the price goes down, you're getting more pieces.
Yeah, but the price will be down for the rest of the week, right? So if they want to work 5 days a week, they're making less.
Katie.
Is that what he's saying?
Well, the biggest thing is trying to balance the various dealers that we have and what their capacity is and what their number of fishermen they have. I mean, you have somebody like Wickford that, you know, they shut down days, they only have 4 or 5 diggers. You know, and they were easily overwhelmed because they didn't conceptually know how to move the clams. I think a lot of them, you know, there's several other dealers I can mention. I know Mars was exemplary. I'd say they buy 65% of the shellfish harvested. By 70% of the guys sell there, and they were buying from other people that weren't their diggers at a lower cost. I don't think they went below 27. I know my shellfish dealer, you know, a lot smaller, but he was able to handle it and you know, inventive or whatever, and he never went below 27. So it's really trying to balance getting the product out, protecting the resource, but giving the fishermen the boost that they need. You know, where 2 days is much better than 1 day financially, if the price you can keep it up. And frankly, I mentioned this last year, the other year, for me, seeing what area 1A and 1B is now, it gives the other areas a rest, which they, you know, really need. You know, if I can make a week's pay in 2 days up the river, that's saving the areas that I fish. At least for me, I know if you want to fish, you can, but it helps protect the areas that are really deep. And the CPU thing, I mentioned to Connor, that's always been how we've been told by Fish and Wildlife how to evaluate what's going on. Because you can think there's 50 million, I can think there's 200 million, but you actually see what the catch per effort unit is on a yearly basis. Can you really tell what is happening in the river? And I mentioned 2012 when the area 1A really got hot. You know, we were doing 2,000 count back then. And 3 years later, we're doing, you know, 1,600. 3 years later, we're doing 1,200. And now, I don't know what the CPU is for the bay other than the area E, but I guess it's probably 400 or 500 slams per day. So you really saw, you know, mathematically or whatever, you know, the decline in the resource. And I think that should be one of the things that we're looking at with the river. And like I said, it went up from the previous year, you know, the catch. So if nothing's perfect, nothing works for everyone, try to do your best. That helps as many as you can.
And my question for you, Mike, earlier you had said you didn't like Tuesdays as when you were speaking with them. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, because any time when you have an area that can change on any day as far as stats, you're much better having the first available day of that area. And we kind of knew that. That's why we went with that. That's why we went with the first 2 non-consecutive days. Just for that reason, that we knew we could capture more of the days and not lose them. If you have a Tuesday, and we're doing it in deference to enforcement and their request, you know, it could rain Tuesday afternoon, and then you miss it the entire next week. Because it would open Wednesday morning for the next week, and you wouldn't get it. So you really hamstring yourself when you pick one day. Monday, Wednesday, at least you get a little flexibility, and you know, it's summertime and enforcement has much greater demands, but that's why it's really important for the December one, because that's critical for the dealers, the diggers, you know, to get access that if you could have that. And I think, you know, speaking for enforcement, there might be less things that you were challenged with as far as having to do, that having it as a floating rolling date for that 3-week period would be very helpful, and would probably gain a day or two if it was like that.
I think we can live with that. You can do a lot of that. I do, with all these proposals, I would like to see vote that would close when MSY is met. I'm surprised that hasn't been happening.
I think because it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, that the MSY is, have you guys actually developed an MSY? Like, I know it seems like it was, you had a number, but it wasn't really something that you were using as a target for some reason. Can you maybe explain why you weren't recommending using MSY as a target? And actually, as Dr. Rice said, our scientific advisor, that going up to 100% up to MSY is not ideal.
But we're not stopping even after MSY, correct?
Well,
I mean, you're
I think-
being wrong. I mean,
well, it seems to me that the MSY, I mean, the first year, what was it, 4% of the standing stockpile mass was the MSY, which was extremely conservative. Was that what you recommended, right? It was 100 million clams, you recommended 4.1 million being harvested, and that was 4%, which is, and then, which was met. And then somehow, then last year, we lost 50 million clams. Your stock assessment showed it was went from 100 million to 50 million, even though only How many were harvested?
That number is like 10 million. Yeah, the total number that you're referencing was not based off of the stock assessment. That was just an extrapolation from the trend data to get a sense of what proportion of harvest was taken and what, based off of that one trend survey, what could potentially be there. So that was different from the MSY calculation that was done before. And I think I know Mike was talking about it earlier, but there is, since it's an area that just opened up and you have to get a sense of that harvest information. This is something where, as we get more years of that harvest data, it'll be much stronger estimate of MSY once we have more data to use in our survey. And we're now sampling it with the drone survey every year, where in the past it wasn't sampled every year. And so the longer time series we have on both of those things, I think the stronger it'll prove our confidence of that estimate. That also is a question.
Because you're not entirely confident in your estimate, that's why MSY has been something.
Also, because the fishery never been managed that way before, and that's why it's back. There's never been a full closure of an area.
Oh, that's what I was gonna say, just tag on to that with that, you know, with the MSY, we're using days as a proxy for that, just like in the lobster fishery, they use trap limits as a proxy for that, or groundfish, they use days at sea. This is the proxy for the MSY, and it's just, that's what we've done in the past, this fishery has worked on days, and it's not specifically a count. So I just wanna say that's the proxy we're working with is days.
Is that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to read behind it. A lot of fisheries are closed based on.
Yeah, I guess shellfish is.
Yeah, that's all we've done.
Yeah, fisheries have hard quotas for shellfish, basic fishery has always been, and that's why the target.
You know, I just want every- I have to be available to you guys, but obviously, research needs,
Yes, right.
I'm just curious, is there an explanation of the difference from 100 to 50? Is there an explanation to that? Why it went from 100 to 50 in a year?
From specific estimate from presentation last year, you know, there can be several things. It's not just harvest, there's natural mortality as well. But I think there's also, we don't have an updated judge calibration on the new survey. Looking at it using the previous year survey or the previous judge calibration, when folks went out and did the side-by-side diver transects and quadrat work and breaking, applying that correction factor, the difference was probably like 30 million. But again, we're not sampling the same exact spot every time within a station that's selected. And so, you know, there's, depending on where we're towing within a station, you know, it's not gonna be the same exact station every year. So again, there is some variability in that estimate, and that was
Yeah, that's a
irrespective
large,
of the MSY.
that's a large
Okay.
difference.
Yes, we'll take a couple more questions. And then I think we can start.
For PEM, before the Providence River was gonna open, during some of the brainstorming sessions, there were discussions about doing condition index surveys of the population aggressively going up the river to try to get a better measure of the spawning contribution geographically. So I mean, is there any more discussion about doing that? Because there's a lot of stumbling around here to try to manage a population based on safest, you know, some people believe the surveys, some people don't, whatever, but you know, you might be fishing on the clams that are doing all the spawning without knowing the harm to the overall population. So that's my question, or is there more discussion about doing that sort of conditions next? And I'm going to quickly follow up on what he said. I'm talking to some DM guys that they went out with Pat. They're saying they found tremendous sets of the river. And this is what we talked about last year, is that I think the dynamics of the river are changing for the pot and for the better. That these areas have been not producing at all. Dennis, you know, mentioned back when he was doing it earlier, it was all dead. So now, you know, not only see the benefit of the water quality improvement on the areas that were working, but now that's not the only game in town. that there's actually a large area above that is acting as a spawner sanctuary, that we were so concerned that this was the only one, area E. So things have changed in how the larvae and all the stuff is going on.
That,
So you still answer my question.
oh, sorry.
So I was wanted to know if there was any plans to do that work.
That's a good question, Dennis, and, that specific work, has not been discussed, but I think there are many different things that have come up, over these meetings, that definitely worth looking into and developing some research questions, so I will get more consensus on that.
That can get very similar. John, no?
Then you can. I just wanted to.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but I talked to a bunch of the guys from my area. And I think the root of all our problems is we get such an influx of non-commercial shellfish. It floods the market, the price drops. Is there any way of limiting a non-commercial person from flooding our market? I think that may be the root of some of our problems. Price would stay the same. I don't know. That's something that a lot of the guys from Tiverton, Little Compton, and that area have said. It's hard to go up there, do really well, but then get paid crappy because there's 100 more people who don't do this for a living. So.
They have.
They have a license times a year. They show up, Bob doesn't turn them, they're not expected to turn them. He wants to make money, he wants as many clams as he can get.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brennan.
I just have, just a couple. I put this up in, at Rhode Island Land and at my place. So I got about 60 guys that are working during the winter and that are for, shellfish remains. Just to hand to you and just you take a look. These are guys that are the full timers working every day during the winter. I would like to see this open and so on.
Yeah, that's good. We'll definitely take that and put that in the packet for the council.
Did you say they wanted to see it open in the winter? Or, sorry, I didn't hear you.
The last part?
Yeah, no, you're.
No.
Who signed the law? Sorry.
It's for the 2 fixed days, the Shellfish Association. The 2 fixed days, the September, October, and then within the 3 days and then winter.
And to that end, I've got 24 more signatures on that same proposal.
Okay. Yeah.
When you're ready, there is a question in the chat.
Okay, we'll go to John and then we'll chat. Go ahead.
I just wanted to state that I think it's important for the industry as a whole to have the consistency year round with some product coming on the market. You know what I mean? I agree. As opposed to a feast and famine type of thing. I know the guys that do this every day and stuff, and then, one day a week for them would make a difference, in the hotter times of the year. As opposed to just summertime type stuff.
Go ahead.
I got a question.
Oh,
If you take John's proposal, and instead of having 6 bushels from this, after January 1st, he went down to 3 bushels. Would that work a little bit better for everybody? It's a hybrid proposal. I don't know, would that hurt the deal, if guys had 1 day a week, three bushels, when the Providence River is open? Would that hurt?
I mean, this one isn't a unnecessarily bad proposal. I just don't think we went away from the non-consecutive weekdays because of enforcement saying that it was such a problem last year. I'm, I'm open for,
Also, it's closed from September through November.
yeah, I mean, that's clam bake season, that's a huge season for dealers. And you closed it to open it during the time of year when there's no business.
I mean, honestly, I could throw that proposal out and just do 1 day a week. I'd be happier with that. I'm trying to balance things out between, the association, which I know they want the 2 days in the summer. I preferably, for me and the guys that I represent, I talk to a lot of guys that want 1 day a week. That's why I wanted something in the winter. I mean, I do it in the winter, it's hard. It's hard to make money, the windy days, the rain, you get every other thing, snow, that's great. You know what I mean? So, I don't think too many guys would argue if they had 1 day, decent day a week, or 2 decent days a month, let's say, with the rain for you.
I got.
In the winter, I don't think it's all about the deal, really. I think it's got more to do with, the fishermen and the business as a whole, where Rhode Island should be represented by Rhode Island Plan, not plans from Virginia or some other place.
I agree, that's why we want it open in the summer.
Hold on, Ken, first we have a question in the chat and then we'll leave.
So Paula from American Muscle asked, I don't believe Paula's on right now, but her question was, how do we best manage the fishery so it persists for the long term? Is it better to harvest year round? I don't know if that's your vision or.
Step 3, this is different. If we harvest the bulk of, if you're harvesting in that short season, that, the bulk of the summertime, does it make a difference?
In general, no, we can offer that, especially in the Providence River, it's probably built more on the total harvest. So
Yeah.
Trying to balance that, so you're within that, and that's why.
Okay, so it doesn't matter when you catch them. Or dig them.
That's not how we manage it, we put them on shellfish.
Okay. All right, Ken, sorry about that.
Yeah, so, first thought I had kind of melts two of the issues with this, because they wanted to go more in September, well, if we switch from the rolling days to, say, Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, or whatever is preferred, that's more conservative. Less days will be open because you don't have the Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday option, so you can maybe push into September or to the end of the month. So I know they were, and then because they were concerned with plant-based season in September.
So you're saying just 1 day from May 30 to September 1, and then move those days into the September through November?
No, just extending that period, another, but at the same time, going from the first 2 non-consecutive days to Tuesday or Thursday, if the rain allows. I'm pretty sure the way you explained the way the openings work is when you put the Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, it actually raises the chance that it's gonna be open above 50%.
Yeah, but that
Or when you say Tuesday or Thursday, there's a 50% chance that those, that each day will be open. And then, and to what DJ said, I already had thought too, if you were really worried about flooding the market in the winter, maybe that time of year, 3 bushel limit, 6 bushel in summer, would be a reasonable way to blend the concerns, I guess.
Good point. Yes.
So unfortunately, I believe all you want to do, so I just want to reiterate, from an enforcement point, we can work with, the voting days in December. We can't support that.
Okay, so you prefer the December,
We can work, we don't want it at all, but we obviously want to work with everybody, so we can do that. December.
We had established days for the summertime
Yeah.
and then the September, October, yes.
Whatever you guys come up with, we support that, we just can't support them.
And that's why we changed it.
We appreciate that. I just want to reiterate that. Thank you.
I just have to work with you. If you, as far as enforcement goes, if you manage 52 weeks, like you weeks a year, or 1 day motion. No. Yeah, kind of rolling. Yeah, my comment was this one here. first of all, with the winter openings, it'd be great if you had like the guys that work all winter to go to the river, you know, those 3 hours. But that's not gonna happen. You're gonna get everybody. Guys. Sorry, so you're gonna get anybody and everybody to go there like you do in the summer. So as far as, you know, people who worry about the price, that's gonna kill the whole winter market. So you're lucky to get a day a week. You know, like the gentleman in the back says, if you don't, you know, if you had full-time guys doing it in the winter, it'd be no problem. It'd be probably good to see you over in Greenwich. But the fixed days, I think are perfect because what happened with a lot of the pricing last year is when it rained, it would open like on a Friday. And then it'd be Friday, Monday, and you know, they would just get bombed with the stuff. So the stuff would back up. And I think that the stuff, it was Monday, Wednesday is perfect for that and keep the flow. That's the point I wanted to make as far as the winter time. It'd be awesome if we could get like, I think it works all winter, but we know what's gonna happen, you know, and be open in the winter. That's why, you know, I mean, I don't know, we're gonna, I don't know what we're gonna do before we start taking nominations or, you know, for proposals, but I'd like to make them for this one.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's time that we start working on a motion, so would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion to accept we're at Shellfish Association as is.
As,
They do the second. I want to make amendments, my motion. The December.
let's, yes. Yeah, motion, so far as Gary has made a motion, but I think it's, we're getting a friendly amendment.
Yes.
Or do you have the second before we get the amendment?
Second.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
The second was,
How does that fit in with you guys' petitions? Would you go all the
That's the
second?
same exact. position.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So basically, the amendment would be from the week starting December 11th. For 3 weeks, it will be open the first available weekday for those 3 periods. So it'd be from the 11th to the 29th. Rather than the fixed Tuesday that we have there now. So December open for, what are we, 12, 11, no, that's 11, that's not Tuesday. But I mean, that, basically, that schedule, but it would be the first available weekday.
Closed on Christmas.
Christmas is Monday. Yes, yeah, it would. It will not be available on December 25th.
no. So the,
Just double check what I'm saying. Guys. Make that more.
so the 26th would be open.
Yes,
If-
or the 27th, or the 28th, or the 29th.
So first available
Weekday.
weekday,
Signed.
starting December 11th.
Yes.
That would be non-consecutive.
It's
No,
only
no,
a day.
1 day a week, so it's just available that. It'll be open 1 day a week, first available day, starting December 11th.
Right.
And taking Christmas off the table.
If I could just, the way that that reads is that you're saying it is open the first available week on the week of, including the week of Christmas, not necessarily saying you're closed on Christmas and you need to be open. So I would suggest making that clarification.
What is the week of Christmas? The 25th, it's the 24th is the week. The 25th.
26, 27, is it gonna be open 3 days in a row, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that week?
Yes, for the 4th of July one?
Okay.
Yeah, that was a request
Monday.
from the dealers. Yes, that would be an added day. We discussed adding a day in Memorial Day, but the guys thought that was too early, so we stuck with the 2 days. So that was the 1 week that, given And if you remember last year too, this is so hard to judge. We added a Thursday last year. And we got a Monday, Wednesday rain. And we didn't get that Thursday. So, I mean, it's the way it is, you know, managing the unmanageables.
I ask a question like, so just, those bullets above were the aspects we're trying to hit. Did you specify a time in the proposal? Do you have a preference for a time? Is it a 3-hour from 8 to 11?
Yeah, I think that's David.
Thank you.
And is it, correct 6 bushels per person? Does that mean it could be 12 per vessel if you have 2 licenses or? Was
That's the
there,
way it's been, yes.
Okay.
We did not delineate on that issue.
Yeah, that was a really necessarily discussion looking forward as much on the last meeting, I think.
Yep, I'm just getting clarification. Thanks.
The division did put that forward.
They had several options that we could use that would alter how they view what we're doing.
So, do I have that captured?
Yes, I believe that's our proposal, right, Bruce?
You could say should per license per day, per person.
You mean the schedule in general captured?
Yes.
Okay. Per license, 6 bushel limit per license. I don't know why I need a day there, but this.
Okay, I would have a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Okay, before the motion, is there a possibility to add days in case we don't get the total days out of this? Like in January, like 1 day a week in January, because we want to get all the days we can. Just on the possibility that we don't get the days, it's gonna be too much. I got a head shake.
Yeah.
I agree with him.
Yeah,
Use all
I mean,
the
it
days
doesn't
we
say
can.
how many days are on it.
Do we have a number of days? So that's what. Is that the number?
It wasn't
there's still hard number.
The one thing I did in discussion with Connor before he went to Florida is that whatever, if there is a count, which we're not endorsing or, you know, where you count the days, that the 3 weeks in December will not be part of that shutdown. In other words, if it's 20, not that I'm proposing this, but if there's a certain number, and let's say we reach it mid-September,
Yeah,
that they still will allow the December opening to not be affected by that shutdown, and we will get December in.
okay, so you're implying that there's a trigger, but it's not your proposal?
I'm implying that if there is a trigger, which I'm not endorsing, or I'm having confusion on if there, what the number is, I heard 14, 24, 20 different numbers, but whatever, if there is a trigger, that would not affect the December openings. And that, because that's so important for the fisheries to get that area.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, you have to put that in the notes, right? That was just how it was explained to me.
I feel like that's something that's kind of important, knowing that there was some implied trigger, but that's okay. Well,
But have we been given a trigger though? That's the thing I don't understand. Have we been given like, okay, we do this and something?
oh,
I think what Mike's trying to do is, we're putting forward something and the council will decide on it. If the director decides in consultation with DEM that this is not acceptable, or this is acceptable, but you have a number of days, is that we're trying to delineate or specify where we would like the, you know, to take the haircut. So it's like, the first thing you want to lose is, you know, like, we don't want to lose the December dates. So DEM understands that and those won't count against it, you know, stuff. The other thing would be like, the first thing we want to lose is the month of October, something like that. Like where you go backwards from this, because if the director decides to do, you know, the DEM says, you need, you know, you can only have 14 days. It's like, well, we don't want them all in July or something. You know, it's going backwards from there. Not is not part of this, but just like, it's a good discussion to have, just like, hey, if DEM won't go along with this, here's where you can go back, you know, start taking haircuts. That's where I thought the Mike was going.
Right, I have to read the text from, basically, we could definitely in reg have it where if the cap is hit, if there is a cap, we leave December schedule as is. That was the last communication, so I think we're all saying the same thing, nobody knows exactly where the direction is gonna be, but we find the December opening very critical.
Okay,
And we want to make sure that happens, or it could happen.
Jerry, then Ken, then Mike.
Just like one thought, can we like set a meeting for, if, in the event that we have an extremely wet summer, and we really don't meet any of the days like everybody's talking about, can we meet in like August? August, September, and then figure out what we can do with these days, for the rest of the year, to like go through, if we can get some of those, is that possible?
We did.
That's
Years ago, we did
Doing
that.
a harvest schedule.
Okay, yeah, we can do something like that, if we have, few days left, we'd like to use it. So we could like set that, you take that conversation like, right out of this and let's see what happens.
Why don't you add them into January and let that ride until it runs out?
That's also,
I'll speak for BBM, I said, that's the point of the management area status, that you can make a request for anything common sense at any time.
But I figured that would eliminate a lot of the conversation, like, what if, all summer, we could just like put that conversation in, like you said, September.
We did that last time, we scheduled a meeting, like, in September or whatever it was. In part of the end of our meeting, and basically said to evaluate and see where we're at.
Awesome.
so
that'd
could
be great.
you, or could you just, can we just put it into this motion now, so we don't have to have another meeting and say, if we, give us, say, 24 days, and then add that for 22 days, because you put 22 days as your target, right? So what if?
I have no targets, I don't
Or-
think they are,
Okay,
and I'm confused about what they are.
okay,
I think that's more steering how many days they want to give. If we can get the maximum amount of days, I think we should take the maximum amount of days. If we put a number on there, then that's a number that, we're gonna, that's all we're gonna get.
so maybe we could, if you guys want, add 24, like, bring us to 24, including January, but if not, that's fine. I'm just trying to facilitate here. Okay. Do you have a question?
Yeah, what I call for a hybrid, if you dropped it to 1 day a week, a month earlier, so at the end of July, that saves 4 days over 4 weeks. You divide those days in half into 3 bushel days, you can have 8 weeks in the winter. It's maybe away, 8 days at 3 bushels.
We get in the motion on this.
We have to shoot the second and then the friendly is fourth.
Trying to work together to kind of.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a-
What I'm trying to make a hard with John's, man,
Yeah,
I guess it's something to that effect.
I appreciate that.
I do think the year-round harvest is a really good thing for the fishing industry and the guys who are still fighting to be fishing.
Okay,
So I get the market concerns. I think the 3 bushel kind of helps with that a little bit.
and we have a motion, and I guess at the end of the day, you can vote for it or not, so, I think,
I just have more of a statement, than anything that's gonna be real quick. So just remember, if we go to 1 day, and in any which way we do it, 1 day a week, it gives the potential to have more of those guys that are not full timers out there, because they're gonna be able to schedule the days off. Okay, a lot of these guys bang nails, they do other stuff, they work the odd jobs, whatever, and it's gonna make it so that it's, yes, we're getting a day in, but we're gonna flood the market because there's gonna be a lot of guys that are gonna show up like they do already on the 1 day. It's easier for a person to call in and miss 1 day because he's gonna have a baby day and then go back to work. So that's just food for thought. Okay, 1 day is easy for a person to get a day of work, to come out there. Okay, we're talking about, the full-time guys trying to keep it for ourselves. That makes it a little easier for them to do that.
Mike,
Yeah, one of the things that, I think that, DEM is gonna have to grapple with is that, I see nothing here that basically, sort of ties, any of this to, standing stock biomass of the clans themselves. To any sort of a sort of estimate of, yields or the like. And this is actually fairly removed from, any of the type of sort of calculations that you might do on. Granted, they need the, sort of the numbers may be, uncertain. And there should be some science to try to, nail them down. But I really urge the group to consider some sort of, closure of this thing when a certain biomass has been reached, as kind of a basic, management. All the rest of this is dealing, basically talking about the distribution. So that's my, sort of urging to DEM and the sort of the division and DEM to take it very seriously, in terms of what that biomass is.
Okay. Do you have any more?
Could I just follow up on Dr. Winston? So thanks, Dr. Ray. And just for everyone, in some of the previous slides, we had in red text estimates of how many days, the department thought we might have access to harvest. And so again, that was based on the average rainfall over the last decade plus. What years you get less, dry years you get more. If I remember, I think the Shellfish Association was looking at, on average, 24 days, but with that modification of making it the first available weekday, that might add a day or two. So just for content, again, on average, based on rainfall, it's about 26.
There's no days out.
Just it went from the next day in December to the first available day. So that changes the likelihood from 50 to
5%.
Yeah, so maybe by a day.
30 versus
Maybe it's,
every 3 years you get one more day.
yeah, so maybe you get a day. Just saying, so maybe it's 25 or 26, just for context. But there's not a hard tap in the proposal like Dr. Rose. It's not a catch one. It's built on goodness.
We don't have any more discussion.
So is there a possibility to add days in January on this proposal or not?
Well, if we meet again in September, October, there's plenty of time, because Dennis mentioned it's the management area, so it doesn't have to go to public hearing or anything. So if we're looking at a very low number, more like 2 years ago, let's say we're only at 15 and we got December, and we have a hard cap that they came up with, then that could be easily addressed then. I would love to get to the point where we start maybe a little earlier, like April and May, when the market starts to pick up with Lent and everything. But I think there's room if we have a meeting scheduled and that's on the agenda, to add the days.
I applaud guys. Just proposing. I just feel like I need to find guys that I talked to that wanted to get in there and when we needed to. It's a year-round business. It isn't, for sure.
State has credits. I know a lot of many guys go over there now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my winter.
You just said you could.
So it was my thought,
You want to look at that?
that when Greenwich ended, that's when this other area would pick up. Like the first week of May, and that way you have a continuality of management areas and stuff, but it is tough in the winter for, early February and stuff, the market's like, I don't think the market's there for that kind of production.
Why do you want stuff in Virginia? I go in the shop and it's handful of bags going in and you're gonna pallet or two. From Virginia.
Absolutely.
And you know what? Every person in this room that's been out to dinner is eating, and they probably didn't even notice the.
Well, we could address that in the September meeting that we have, and we'll know the dates then, we'll have better data as far as what we've used, and we can look to add days if we think we're not gonna hit
Whatever they, yeah, I mean, I just let it roll until, you know, if the days don't get used, go into the winter, let it go. You know, I don't think it's a bad idea, I mean.
Not a bad
I would oppose it.
What if you went into the winter and we reduced it to a 3 bushel limit?
There you go.
Instead of the 6.
Yep. So, there's a lot of ideas that we could
Just at
do.
that point, just at that point, when the winter season kicked off. That.
Make sure that we have a scheduled staff for winter harvest or.
Whether we use the days or not, let's schedule a meeting to discuss.
Like a reassessment.
Well, we have to do a credit schedule anyway, we can do that at the same time.
We'll make sure it's a little earlier, I think we can a little later, so we'll try to get it.
We gotta get it soon. But I think.
That way we have a handle on it.
Well, we
And
can-
that we have this, this schedule is
we'll be ready to go.
wrapped up, we have a better handle on the flat. And then goes from there.
Hey, why do you guys always say 6 and 3? Whatever happened to the
You ever think about more like in the winter, you gotta get your boat up there, you gotta pay for your fuel, it's not an easy day.
Well,
If you could get 4 bushels, you can make more money than 3. Did you ever think of that?
We have a motion on the table.
Consistency, you know,
That's what the next meeting.
oh, I didn't know it was 4, I didn't know he's everything that's possible hard cap, the north that ever happened would have to go, she go on the Fisheries Council as a regulation, and then we'll probably ask this panel in the process of investigating that. So it's like,
They can talk about Providence.
We've done a motion, if anybody else has anything to add to this or any thoughts. If not, anyone in the audience? Yes,
So Kim, and this, had to leave, but he left with no.
okay.
We can, you drop some chats into, so we can't vote in person. We've offered to have Brendan serve as his in-person proxy or have that serve as his support for the Shellfish Association motion. And so
Okay,
that Brett and I chatted about what might be best just to have it on the record.
I'll have it on the record, Brandon has his own vote, so, thank you. I will make sure that that's. I'm sure. Can you vote?
So can we add to that as far as if again, to their point, if it's not met, that we will revisit the winter harvest? Does that need to be in the proposal?
That's a good question. I don't know.
It doesn't?
No, it's still like a scheduling.
if it is now, we could.
We have a yearly one that we do the Greenwich scheduling. It's usually October or September. And it's usually set with the Marine Fishery Council schedule. And, you know, in the 18 days it takes for the director to sign and all that stuff. So
Well, the only reason I mention this, Mike, is because we don't have a hard number on the amount of days that we can actually get in there, that I don't want this to be swept under the rug. I do agree with what these guys are saying, and I think that if it was on paper, it would be something that would have to be discussed. That's all I'm saying. If you're saying it's not necessary, I just want it so that it wouldn't be kind of, okay, well, we're focusing on the winter without,
yeah.
you know, more
It is.
states.
Anybody here can put it out.
Okay.
If anybody here can.
Yes.
So just today's question, so Dave, we can capture that in minutes and we can add it to the SAP agenda now for that following.
That would be wonderful. I just don't want to lose that because if we do end up with a wet summer and we do lose days, then it, you know, kind of like it gets in the rearview mirror. And now all of a sudden we're worried about the winter harvest that, you know, this was already brought up. I think it's a good idea myself. And, you know, I think we'll help out a lot of guys. And if we really examined it, it might be very beneficial for the industry.
So we can definitely add it as like an update. We'll just have to think about whether it's voting. We can do it.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, I think it's time for a vote on the motion. We can change the date. Okay, so Mike, who made the motion, this accurately reflects the motion that you have.
I sure hope so, yeah. I
Okay.
think Jerry made the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jerry It was seconded actually already by, well, fine. Okay, so I'm calling to a vote and for honesty sake, I'm gonna say everyone's name. So, all in favor, please raise your. Okay, yeah, ready? Yes. Brennan, Jeff, Jerry, Manuel, with a G, Dave, John, Ken, and Jeff, Wilmer,
I'm cheating.
Russ, Collier, and Ethan. And this. You can bring your hand up. All opposed. All right, thank you, everyone. That was good.
I have one matter, if I could quickly bring it up.
We have one more, we have to do the record of the, which. Okay, with that.
Yeah.
You should put Cameron there.
In one second. What is next? You want to make a turn?
You can, if that's what you can.
I'll make the most difference.
We have another, we still have to talk about the recreational harvest. And we have,
Make the motion of which day is not a vote, the recreation. Second.
second.
Enforcement was still here. I was wondering how that was working out. The way they did it last year.
I have personally never been up there, you know. It's hard to go from the bottom of the bay up there. Past more shells, more clearing than it is to go get just that bush of pepper. Whereas from what I gather, there's some people that are doing it and it seems to be pretty good.
I'm up there a bunch of times like this, there's a lot of people walking on.
Yeah, I know enforcement was struggling over it last year. That's why they didn't want the floating days because it was too confusing for the rest. All the floating said, oh, they just opened it up and I was wondering how it worked out.
You have comments or that anything from enforcement that we, recreational.
Not aware of any.
Yes, ma'am.
Is status quo open daily year round?
That is step right there,
Open.
daily, as long as it's open. Traditionally,
Per range, yeah, water. Okay, yeah, that's what, but it's not tied to the animal, yeah, that's fine.
Hearing no more discussion on the motion, we will go to a vote. All in favor? Well, we'll pass unanimously. All right, moving on, do we have any other matters? Right.
Yeah, I discussed with my membership the other day, in regards to the Spawner Sanctuary, which is just outside Greenwich Bay. It was set up 20 years ago, Dennis. And back then, we had really robust transplants because we fed money for the Superfund site and some other things. And we really did put a lot of clams in there. But I don't think in the last 10 years or so, we haven't put any in. I don't think we put any in when we did the Providence River. And I know the way we have the transplants set up now with no transplant boats and going to Bristol, all that stuff. So what we'd like to do is ask Fish and Wildlife to consider opening this area up under the management rules. It'd be 3 bushels. I don't believe that area closes. I'm not sure on that. Is that area closed? Is that
No, it's south of the Greenwich Bay closure line.
closure line? So it's an area that would never close. So if something happens bad, you know, at least this would be more area. And frankly, some guys can dig in there anyway. And so I just think I think it'd be good for the area. I think getting in there and tearing the bottom up, especially with a hard bottom there. And I think it would be a boost. So I would ask Fish and Wildlife to consider that and make that as part of the next topic at our next membership, next meeting.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna add to Mike's comments, so that part of the purpose of that is whenever state funds were expended on the transplants to justify that in the public benefit aspect, we made a percentage of the clams going to that closed area for food stuff.
Right.
Do you think about on that area?
No, we can put that in the next.
Yes. Mike.
Just one question. And Jerry made a point at the last meeting. What about doing the transplant for free? The dig and dump? I really like that. I really like the thought of that, and I think it will do the resource real good to keep the claims that were retransplanted from not bunching up, and it will help to proliferate to feed the rest of the bay there.
And to Mike's point, if I may add, the other thing we talked about was, I'd really like to see, Pat, we do a comprehensive study of all the closed areas to really get an idea of the density of these areas. To Mike's point, I mean, I agree with him, it's great to do transplants, but I'm also concerned about biomass, keeping a healthy biomass in a place like Apponaug. Because the area that I'm working, the North Shore, and Mike was here, a bunch of guys were there, and I think that's the main feed. So if sometime during the summer, we would help with, if you need a fisherman to be with you, to go to Greenwich, go to Warren Cove, go to Apponaug, go to Greens River, and any other places, maybe, you know, on the other side, we just got a comprehensive idea of what we're dealing with and kind of direct us on where we can go.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to work with you guys on that.
We can provide a boat. What's, Mike, so you're not in favor of volunteer transport? No, I'm in favor, and I just want to make sure that everything's, you know.
Being that you're the transplant guy, do you have any discussion about volunteer transplant?
I have not, we've been focusing on the paid one that we're doing in May 2nd. On Greenwich. I said, I do worry that the deeper these lines go, and if you know the old lines at Greenwich Cove, we're way up now from where we used to be. And we just gained some more grounds on the Apponaug side. Now, everybody did well when we did Apponaug fairly well. And we didn't go deep into that curve behind Dickerson around the corner there. You know, and so if that place is chock full, you know, let's go, you know, whether it's paid or volunteer. But just getting an idea of what, you know, is available and I think it's important to keep these areas healthy.
Did you do your testing yet?
No, we've been put on hold for the health department.
All right, how
At
about
the end of the
month?
month.
How about the middle of long COVID? Have somebody tested it, see if there's
We tested last year in North Cove
any.
and it was fine. But that wasn't a comprehensive, it was more like we have 3 places to go to and 2 hours to do it. This would be like spend a day, and really, get a good idea what's in these areas. Thank you.
There's a lot of places in the salt ponds that are closed as quote unquote spawner sanctuaries. And it's debatable on how efficient they are. If we're gonna be doing sampling, could I request that they also check the quote unquote closed spawner sanctuaries for biomass? Because if there's no biomass, what's the point of having them closed to the public? That's what I wanna know. Is there broodstock there?
I sampled one of them, I think Manningbred a few years ago with Dave Patel. I don't know what it was for, but we went through the whole spawner sanctuary there.
Did you find much?
It's long ago. It's long enough ago. I don't really remember. I don't remember finding much in the sand overlock. I think there was some
I know
stuff.
in Pawnee is a place where the public gets,
I spent like 3 days doing it, so it was like fairly intensive.
for the record, I think it should be done.
Oh, I'd really go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is a survey, that we can check that data, but. Yeah.
Okay. Ken and then Jim.
Is this spawner sanctuary on the fish man? I'm just trying to figure out how to see exactly where it is.
Yes.
It goes from the flagpole at War Country Club to Sandy Point, to the Spindle Can, and then back to the flagpole.
Which interactive map are you looking at?
I don't know. We're not running my race.
I know.
Yeah.
Because one of them does, and one of them doesn't. There's a water resources one.
Which I think you're on right now, the Shellfish Harvest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does.
It's all part of the one that's broken into the 3 parts. Yeah, the 3 triangles there, just north of the highway there. So the triangle between Water Connect and the one that goes to, yeah, okay. Mixed up in that. Okay.
Minimal and then.
What's the most recent survey on Sapala? Designated in the training center.
Oh,
Sapala.
oh, you're on the interactive map, it shows it as a recreational area.
And I'm wondering what the most recent survey, how long ago it was.
You survey outlet for your, the resident.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. That would be a good question for Ben Getch, because he probably did the survey.
Here's what Ben said. That somebody from the DEM went into some palace in the past 2 years. Dug, but they didn't find any clams whatsoever. 0, he said. But that's impossible. Find 0. Because I lived nearby and I made some test pits myself and I was finding, little necks and so on. I just wonder what is it?
Maybe you guys can, we'll look at the record. Okay, we have mission.
I'm not sure.
I don't think there's a real reason, and not a really serious.
Gary, and then.
Yes. I was asked to come in and give this proposal for consideration, future consideration. This area is that we've been talking about, Providence, is closed and it has a limited number of days for the purpose of not flooding the market, so the clams can be successfully marketed at a reasonable price. There's also a time limit, the amount of time you can spend up there digging. And one of the proposals to consider in the future is, rather than have a bushel limit for that area, other than the 12 bushel, the 12 bushel limit we have for the whole bay, rather than have a bushel limit, the time frame itself creates a limit on what you can harvest. In some instances, you might get 2 bushel, or 6 bushel, or 8 bushel. One of the problems you have with having a bushel limit like you have is you're always going to favor the most expensive product. And the hogs and cherries get thrown back. The market needs the hogs and cherries. And by throwing them back, it's not like you're doing damage to anything, except you're throwing the clams back rather than keeping them. The purpose is to limit the total harvest dumped on the market in a certain period of time. So we limit it by the days and we limit it by the time frame. When you limit it by the number of bushels, that creates, again, a greater burden on enforcement. Because now they have to look and check to see if you got over your limit. And last year, some of the guys were cited because they kept a couple of bushel of hogs. And they lost all their clams for it and other things. But the consideration should be given in this type of management plan or program, that the time frame should be sufficient and not necessarily a bushel limit. That's it. Thank you.
All right. And with that, nobody like this, we have a motion to adjourn.
But I'll motion to adjourn. Second.
All right, guys, thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Yeah.